Now, Ant, I still want to. I've got to talk to you about your new book as well, but let's get onto the subject of Brumbies, which you've had a lot to say about. And we mentioned right at the start of the show that Kosciuszko National Park under a huge threat from climate change, but also from feral animals. Tell us what's been happening up in the national park with wild horses.
Well, the park's open again after a significant cull over winter. And I don't know if any Brumby supporters are listening to this, but you need to know 2 or 3 facts. You need to know when listening to these facts that I came into this issue cold 4 years ago.
Yep.
Then what I did was I wrote the Brumby Wars, and I spoke to 30 people on each side, 60 people, 30 on each side of the debate.
Mm-hmm.
I've read all the scientific literature. I'm not biased. I've walked the mountains. I've seen the damage for myself. I don't hate horses.
Yep.
Brumbies don't belong in Kosciuszko. They're causing damage. The shocking scenes were before the cull, when these landscapes we talked about earlier that evolved with echidnas and wallabies and soft-footed small animals, landscapes that had never seen a 500-kilo horse, landscapes that now were asked to carry 20,000 500-kilo horses, destroying waterways, turning gentle wetlands into wide-open stormwater drains, killing biodiversity. I love horses, but smart horse lovers, and I know many of them, believe that horses don't belong in that landscape. So you ask me what's happening in Kosci now. The landscape's breathing. The landscape's recovering. Now, I haven't read the latest. I believe there's going to be an aerial survey in coming months.
Yep.
So we'll have a better idea of numbers again. But, New South Wales Environment Minister Penny Sharp has done such a brave thing. In the Brumby Wars, there was a moratorium put on shooting 20 years ago, aerial shooting, right? But it's the only way. And here's what people need to know about aerial shooting. If there are any animal lovers, well, who is not an animal lover, but if there are any people who are concerned about the animal welfare aspects of aerial shooting, okay? Back in 2000, there was a cull that went wrong on the north coast of New South Wales in a thing called Guy Fawkes River National Park.
Yep.
Difficult country, a lot of canyons, a lot of, really... So they found a couple of horses about a week after the cull that had been shot but weren't killed. Mm-hmm. That hasn't happened in Kosciuszko because the horses can't retreat into those sort of canyons that they could in northern New South Wales. They mostly live on open plains, the snow plains of northern Kosciuszko. When these award-winning marksmen, right, these are the best guys, and I was unable to identify the marksman I spoke to because he had fear of reprisal for the Brumby Wars.
Yep.
But he had more awards than most people who go to the Olympics shooting for Australia, right?
Uh-huh.
He was a crack shot. And these are the people that are humanely ending these horses' lives for the sake of the national park.
Yep.
And all the native species. These are the people that get it first time 99.999% of the time.
Yep.
And if they don't, they circle straight back around, and 3 seconds later, the horse is gone.
Yep.
It is as humane. It is 10 times more humane than any abattoir. Because in abattoirs, animals feel the fear before they die. The horses don't even know they're about to be shot.
Yep.
So it is as humane as it could possibly be, and there are no horses wandering around a week later wounded, bleeding slowly to death, which happened with one horse.
Mm-hmm.
One horse in the whole of Australia. And that's been the horse that Brumby campaigners have hung their hat on. No one's happy about ending an animal's life.
Yes, yes.
I'm sad the horses are there in the first place. I'm sad that lethal force has to be taken to end their lives. I also understand that a lot of people love the Brumbies. I do. But they don't belong in the national park. And, John Barilaro gave them a Christmas present. This is what I can't understand. There still has to be 3,000 of them there. Now, when National Parks and Wildlife Service officers first identified a Brumby problem back in 2000, 25 years ago,
yeah,
they went, oh, geez, these horses are causing all kinds of damage. There was 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Right? There was about 1,000 of them. The minimum number we can have is still 3 times a number that causes bad damage. So you tell me that there aren't still Brumbies in Kosciuszko. There are.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be any. But they've got their 3,000 thanks to the Barilaro legislation, which hopefully one day is repealed.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
Yeah.
So I think the numbers are still too high, and I think they'll continue culling in the future. And of course, some of the horses will be breeding now, so we may well have a herd of 11 or 12,000 by this time next year. But whatever the number is, there's still too many. But the trick here, and it's an important thing to bear in mind, is not to fall into the numbers game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not to fall into that, because Felicity from Facebook can just, as in a random Facebook user who's pro Brumby,
yeah,
can just say, there's not that many, I know. No, she doesn't know, but people are gullible and they believe that shit.
Yeah.
Right? It's garbage.
Yeah.
But, these people are out there professionally counting wild animals for a living, be they native species or feral species. They have ways of doing it. And people on Facebook don't, so they have no idea. But you can't, if you start talking numbers, you bring the fight down to their level, because then it's just a nah. It's like, there's 10,000. No, there's not. There's 3,000.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know and I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's one thing we do know. We know there are too many.
Yeah.
Because we can see the damage,
yeah,
and we can see the herds, and we know there are too many. We know there should be none. But if there are a few, that's okay. But when you go through the northern parts of the park, there are still plenty. So we know there are too many. So I don't talk in terms of there are now X thousand or Y thousand. I talk in terms of, are there still too many? Yes, there are.
Yep. Good point. And it's an issue that's not going to go away. The Brumbies, it's going to be an ongoing issue. As you say, the horses that are left are going to continue to breed, and control has to be ongoing. As difficult as that is.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere, and don't ask me for a solution. In the Brumby Wars, I advocated for a Brumby sanctuary.
Yeah.
Have it situated just on the fringe of the park.
That seemed like a really good idea to me. Really good compromise.
It would have to be maintained. It would have to be paid for.
Yeah.
It would have to be over a really big area.
Yeah.
And again, these people on Facebook who are so passionate about every last Brumby, would they fund it? Because someone's got to fund it. I don't know too many zoos that are taxpayers funded.
Yeah.
So maybe some are, but that's basically what it would be: a big free-range zoo somewhere on the fringe of the park. That I still think that would be the best solution. But let's see if they put their money where their mouth is.
Yep.